Good morning, and welcome to the 2011 GSA Annual Meeting. I'm Lyle Bell. I'm chairman of the Gaming Standards Association, and I've been doing this for 6 years now. And there's a gentleman sitting there named Greg Solomon. Greg, can you stand up, please? Greg is my predecessor, and he's the individual who changed what used to be a manufacturers association called GAMA into the Gaming Standards Association, which is an association of operators, manufacturers, and of course we have a lot of laboratory and industry participation. And I'd like to recognize Greg for what he did back then. It was a very brave thing. It's been a challenging year this year. In March, we came to the realization that we were not going to realize our dues goals, and we had to make some major adjustments to the budget. We've made some reductions in personnel, but we're going strong. And by the way, I think the reason that our revenue fell off is that over the past few years, there's been a tremendous amount of work in doing development, and there's been people from around the world that have wanted to be in on that. But frankly, we had the standards to the point where they exist, they're real, they've been openly available, and there was frankly less incentive for companies to participate because it was everything that they needed was on the website. And that's the reason why we made the decision this year that in the future to have access to GSA standards is going to be necessary to become a member. And Peter will explain later how we restructured our member categories to be able to make it affordable to be a member. Despite these changes, we're still going to be operating as very, very lean, mean organization. And our focus over the next year is really to get G2S and S2S certification programs into place and rock solid. G2S is a protocol that's out there that is no longer going to be a moving target. I know that's been a major impediment to getting it implemented in the field. Well, it's going to be fixed. It won't change so that we can all focus on implementation. I know there's a lot of work to be done out there, more so I think on the software development side than on the games themselves. And I know that all of the vendors are working hard towards that, but it's a huge lift to change from the legacy products that are out there today to one that uses and properly implements the GSA standards. So it's going to be a good year ahead, I think, for the industry, and I feel confident that we're going to see some success stories out there. So with that, with those comments, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Peter, who will go ahead and conduct the annual meeting. And thank you for being here this morning.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Peter Dorat. I've been doing this for 13 years together with the gentleman Greg Solomon and Lyle Bell. It's an absolute honor to have those gentlemen as chair people as well as the board members, because without the board members, we simply would not be able to be where we are today. So let's get started. We're going to give you a quick update of the financial report, which is going to be quite a difference this year for the first time, as Lyle explained. We're going to talk about what we have achieved this year. And there's some very fundamental elements that we have achieved. I'm not going to be doing all the talking. I've done this last year, the years before, etc. I've got key individuals here who will be speaking on specific topics that are very critical to the success of GSA today and in the future. And then we obviously have our keynote, and I'm very proud to say that we have these three operators willing to speak, and that's going to be a very interesting session. Needless to say, without the Platinum membership, who produce roughly half of our revenue that we need to operate, GSA would not be able to operate. So I'd like to really acknowledge those companies who spend a lot of money, and not only money, resources, in making all that stuff happen through their volunteers' participation in committees, chairs, and through their funding of GSA. So Aristocrat, thank you. Valley, IGT, thank you. Konami, Mars, MEI, the Seminole Tribe, Florida, Spilo, and WMS. Thank you very much for your strong support. I'd also like to thank all the gold members and silver members, and hopefully in the future our bronze members, because without your donation, GSA as a trade organization can simply not provide the service that this industry absolutely needs. I was at a CIO conference on Monday, probably about 30, 40 CIOs. And the question is the same consistently. How do we embrace mobile gaming? What do we do with the social media? What about internet gaming? All these technologies racing at high speed outside, in the outside world. And how do we do that inside gaming? And I said, well, the Trade Association has a session, a committee, that allows operators to develop together, identify non-competing functionalities and features that they'd like to see, and then hand it over to the vendor community through our board. We have processes in place to do that. And then standards can be created. GSA is not only a protocol association. If you read our mission very clearly, we started by changing SaaS. My God, it's taken 13 years to come to this point. We are here. These products that have been developed with the countless hours and hard work of every single dedicated committee chair and leadership, today, they produce the results, the fruit of all that hard work, the standards. But we can do a lot more. We can reach out to regulators. We can start considering harmonization of technical requirements across the country and across countries. These discussions are in process. So I want to tell you that this association has a role to play, will play a role forever in this gaming industry, and it's only because of the donation that we are able to do and provide you that support. Mission statement, I'm sure everybody knows this blindly by now. What we do, we identify, develop, and promote standards. And it's important we continue to promote this around the world. And I can tell you, I don't have slides, but there's some very good success stories happening. In Europe, I think there are 2 countries, one soon to be announced where the government says we're going to use GSA for central monitoring. There's another one that's already doing it. If you go to Australia, a couple of weeks ago, there was an announcement made by a very large central monitoring operator, actually a vendor, who won a large contract in Victoria. Now, Victoria, Australia, has been a very challenging state for those people who are not that part of the world because they've always been using QCOM. There's a couple of other standards, protocols that are used. And guess what? That operator will use G2S. If you look at the Canadian part of this world, and there's a lot of Canadians here, they will speak about the importance of the use of a common standard protocol. And they selected G2S. So there is movement. There is definitely movement. I know other countries, South America. Yesterday we talked about Brazil. We were in Peru a couple of months ago, Ethan. Very well received. So there's a lot of action happening because these governments are looking for ways to get the transparency of the information using a common standard. It only makes sense. Let's go to the next slide. Those are the board members who went through quite a rough time in 2011. We had more meetings than the normal board meetings, and there's quite a few board members in this room, and I'd like to thank you because it was not easy. As Lyle said, as of April 1, we started to realize we had a challenge with the revenue. We had a series of rapid meetings, bi-weekly. What are we going to do about it? How do we address it? How do we optimize it? How do we become a lean machine and still be able to provide the services? So I'd like to thank every single one of them. Every single name you see on there participating in those discussions, I'd like to spell them out. Lyle Bell from the Seminole, our chair. Adrian Marcoux from IGT. Rick Giuli, he's here. Tom Bochum, Penn. Jim Morrow from Aristocrat. Walt Eisler from Bally, Melissa Price, Caesars, Jean Marie Wilkins, Isle of Capri, Steve Sutherland from Konami, Bob McKenzie from MEI, Don Doucet from Spilo, and Mark Pace from WMS. I'd like to thank you because this was not an easy year. Let's go to the financial report, and this time I have the pleasure to handing that stuff over to Tom. So Tom, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Peter, I think. For those of you that don't know, there was an opening for treasurer in April, right when we discovered the financial state. I was relatively new and was nominated, and then they showed me the financials after I accepted. So this will be very brief, but 2011, as you can see, and many of these numbers are going to look similar to the numbers that we see on a regular basis, but you can see we ended up with a projection of $1.4 million versus $2 million, so a 32% decrease from where we had been. I would give credit to Peter for reacting very quickly, because with that close to $600,000 reduction in top-line revenue, was able to reduce almost $600,000 from expenses. So we ended up with a loss of about $170,000 versus a plan of about $63,000 loss. And as you can see, that cut in half the equity that we started with. So obviously that is not a sustainable path to be on. And much of that was done through internal expense savings and reductions in ongoing expense and programs. For next year, the assumption, and part of this is because of the change in the revenue classes that Peter will get into, but we're expecting a slight increase in revenue, and a lot of that is based around not having standards available without having to be a dues-paying member. The expenses basically flat to this year, no increase, and I think being very prudent in managing the bottom line because of what's happened with the top line. Those changes result in a profit of $110,000, adding that back to cash, so we end up at the end of 2012 basically where we began 2011. I don't know that I'm going to take questions. I'd be happy to, although I would probably hand them off to Peter. One thing I would say, though, is as an operator, we value these standards tremendously. And it would be very nice if we only dealt with one vendor, but I think all of us deal with a multitude of vendors. And as Lyle had mentioned, moving forward where we've got not just the internal gaming systems, but figuring out how do we play in a world where the customer is online at home, whether they're gaming or just checking their accounts. It's going to be more and more important that we have a set of standards that we can all work to without having to reinvent the wheel every time we go through a new upgrade. So we at PEN are very supportive of GSA, and hopefully, assuming that I'm still allowed to be treasurer next year, we can present better numbers to you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Peter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Okay, let's talk a little about the achievements. I'm going to do a little bit of a speech about what we have done for the reorganization in the organization. I'm going to explain to you the main differences between the membership categories. And then I'm going to hand it over to Ethan Tower, who's going to talk about the standards, a few slides, and eventually land up with Paul to talk about the very important committee. It's called the Certification and Interoperability Committee that this industry has started this year. And the year ahead is going to be very, very important for this industry. So that being said, you heard it. We have reorganized GSA. We used to have 7 people. Today we are 5 people. That means some of us have to do more work. There's marketing elements that disappear. There's a series of elements that we decided we're going to do differently. We will empower the committee chairs to take responsibility of the committees that they run, both the chairs and the vice chairs. There will be training for those committee chairs and vice chairs to make sure that they're up to speed about the policies and manage these committees independently, more empowered versus GSA. GSA will provide the support and oversight. We have streamlined our policies. GSA used to have about 28 policies fragmented over the last 11 or 12 years that we've been in operation. We've decided it's time to consolidate some of those, and it's time to get rid of some of the other ones. As a result, we landed up with 6 policies, which are on our website now. Those policies change. Any input we can get from any member will come back to GSA. We will take that into consideration and change. These policies are not legal documents, otherwise it'll be too big. They're guidelines. So anybody who has any comment, committee chair, committee participant, any member, please forward you those comments on those policies and we will discuss them in the board and vote on that. The next thing is enhanced membership value. What we have indeed done is closed access to the documents. No longer are these documents for free. And then people say, okay, well, you call it an open standard, but it's not free. Well, it has nothing to do with it. It's not because you pay for something that it's not open. This is an open standard. It's been developed by the industry for many years as an open standard. But guess what? If you want to get a copy of it, you pay the lowest amount, $10,000, and you have a copy of it. And not only do you get a copy of it, but any technical bulletin that comes out related to that standard, you get a copy of. So basically, you invest in the standard. If you take this thing seriously, you want to make sure that you implement the standard in accordance to what GSA has defined. Exclusive for members. I want to articulate this very clearly. So when the board decided to close access to the standard, there are some benefits, which you'll see in a second on the next slide, that are very important. You cannot get a manufacturer ID code if you're not a member of GSA. Okay? So for anybody who wants to take GSA standards seriously and is a manufacturer and wants to put it in their product, whether it's a system or a game or anything else, you need to be a member because GSA will issue a manufacturer ID number. This is very much the same, probably unknown to all of you guys, than USB. USB charges about $4,500 a year, in between $4,000 and $4,500, to retain that unique identifier that associates your company with the USB. And that's why if you plug a USB device in Windows, it comes up, welcome Logitech, or whatever the name of the company is, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you want to get a product certified that has GSA standards built in, guess what? You need to be a member. If you're not a member, you cannot get your product certified. So the lowest level remains $10,000. And we hope with that lowest level we're able to get the funding sufficiently enough to continue to operate this trade association to the benefit of the industry. Let's look at the table for membership. We reorganized this table and the benefits. And I think it should hopefully become very clear in the first section of that, where you see key benefits. The numbers have changed. They've been streamlined: $40,000, $80,000, $40,000, $20,000, and $10,000. You go from platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. What are the major differences? If you go down the list, voting rights. If you're platinum and gold, you have voting rights. Otherwise, you don't have voting rights. The next thing is access to draft standard. If you're a silver, everybody above, obviously yes, but if you're a silver member, you can have access to standard. What does that mean? If you are a bronze member, you cannot participate at committees. You will be given access to documents, you'll be given your manufacturer ID code in the case you need it, and you can get your product certified. But you will not get access to the committees. For that, you need to be a minimum of a silver member to take part of the dialogue. Then the rest is self-explanatory. It talks about submission product for certification. Again, as you can clearly see here, you need to be at least a bronze member. Access to released standards and updates, the same thing. You're a bronze member, guess what? You get technical bulletins, any change that come out, you need to know about it because you need to translate that into your product. Now there are two additional categories, advisory and affiliate. And the advisory category has no access to the committees unless decided by the board that it makes sense for that organization or company to have access. They do receive updates to the standards, but that's about it. The rest are just marketing. The additional benefits at the bottom are more marketing benefits than anything else. So you can see the change really took place in the key benefits at the top. I think everybody understands. You want the standards, you want to read them, you pay $10,000, you get the technical updates per year. If you drop out next year, you simply lose that. And that's the next slide, before I hand it over. Certification of products requires membership. Explain that. To participate in fault reporting and in resolution, you need to be a member, otherwise you simply cannot have the dialogue that exists within this industry. Critical updates, we talked about that. Important. You will lose your certification if you drop out as a member. You join next year, you are a bronze member, you have the standards, you implement it, you get your product certified. Guess what? If the year after you decide no longer to be a member, you will lose the certification of the product that was given to you. The manufacturer ID code, how is that going to get handled when you join and when you leave? It's issued by GSA to one company only for its sole and exclusive use. If you have WMS or IDT or Bally, any one of those companies, and they use the Bally code, and Bally decides to drop out of GSA, we don't want other vendors using the same code because it will create confusion in the industry. GSA will manage those manufacturers' ID codes. And that's why that said termination of membership will lead to the revocation of the manufacturer ID. But GSA will keep a list and will not assign that revoked manufacturer ID to any other company. There's an exception. If the company gets acquired or purchased, there's a merger, then in that case, the acquirer can have the code from the other company back. Most importantly, and I'm going to leave this discussion to this gentleman, Paul, who's been brave enough to take it up on him to manage the Certification Interoperability Committee, a major decision that was made at the strategic meeting, besides the restructuring of GSA, is certification. Lyle alluded to the fact these standards are done. There are version numbers out there. Will they be improved? Yes. Are we going to continue to develop in 2012 standards at the speed that we've been doing before? No. Why we want the industry to understand that these technologies are ready, they're stable, they're being implemented by vendors, and we want to make most importantly sure that they can get certified. And the whole discussion on certification took a long time. There are test labs out there that test the way they want to test it, and they provide added value. But as an industry, we agreed we need to come up with a golden standard to test. And amazingly enough, the industry pulled together. Competitors are sharing their test scripts, and they're trying to develop, under kind of an open source concept, the ability to continue to improve those test scripts as an industry. It's never happened before. But it's a very, very important step to increase the quality of the products that you're going to be purchasing. For that, I'll leave that to Paul. Lastly, education. We're only 5 people. We try not to fly too much, and yet we've been able to get to various parts of the world. Ethan has done the majority of that. Canada. He was in South America. Russ Rustine is here, I believe, and Russ was kind enough to go to Chile, Peru, right? Peru. Europe. There is a lot of interest in a European country for us to educate, as a matter of fact, 2 of them. And in Asia, we will continue to do the development with the Macau Polytech Institute for the creation of the very first baccalaureate computer science gaming technology program. Those students will be rolling out in 2 years. They'll be here in Reno next week, and we will continue to do a knowledge transfer so that they can start putting the curriculum together that allows them to produce the next engineers and students with the understanding of IT, gaming, and gaming standards. And I think as a result of that, you will see the acceleration or proliferation of standards throughout that region in the next 5 years. With that being said, I'd like to hand it over to Ethan, who can talk about the alignment of our standards. Thank you, Ethan.
Well, I think even with all the challenges that we had this year, we were able to accomplish a lot in the technical committees. The first thing we were able to do was get the GATT 3.50 standard released. This was a very important, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's the serial protocol that's used to authenticate the gaming machines. The regulators love it. However, they found that a lot of the implementations were inconsistent, and so they came to GSA and say, guys, can you go in there, get rid of the ambiguities, get this standard to the point where everyone can implement it and we can really start using it in the field. So sort of prodded on by the regulators, we got GATT 3.50 out the door, and I think so far, I think everyone's very happy with the results of it. Also in February, we got S2S15 finally completed. For you guys who've been around for a number of years, we were going to do a 2.0 version, and then we said, nope, we can't do that. We want to maintain backward compatibility. We went back to 1.5, did a lot of work on it. But I think it's really going to be a very, very strong foundation going forward for the S2S protocol. A lot of the ambiguities, the questions, the areas that people had strayed from the standard in terms of communications and message handling, I think we've gotten resolved in that. And we've also made the first steps in there in getting S2S aligned with the final versions of G2S. In March, because of some of the issues with 103, the board decided to go ahead and release a G2S 1.1 to set a definitive benchmark for the industry in terms of what should be implemented today. That was released back in March. Since then, we've continued on developing in the different protocols. In May, the serial GATT 4.0 was completed. That really finishes off the whole GATT package. That we decided to get the original 3.5.0 out in December so that people could start working on the authentication of the game code itself. 4.0 includes all the peripheral devices. And so that was I think a major milestone, at least for the regulators who love this stuff. And if you're not familiar with G2S and S2S, GATT is actually supported in those protocols too, so that you can actually do authentication serially through G2S, through S2S. And we have a nice uniform package, so however you're getting at the machine and want to do authentication, you get the exact same results. So that was important. Back in July, we finished up GDS 1.2. I think the last time we did a GDS release was back in 2008. Since then, there have been a number of implementations done. People had questions. We resolved issues. And we finally got to the point where we said, let's get 1.2 out there. We think we've got these standards under control. Let's get that out. GDS, once again, those are the standards that the note acceptors use, the printers use, card readers, and things like that. So those were completed in July, and we started the process of getting those protocols ratified. First, we have to send them out for member review, for member comments. We address all the comments, send it out for a call for IP, get the final vote. It takes about 4, 5, 6 months to complete that process. That process for S2S 1.6 and G2S 2.1 started in August. Both of those, the technical committees got the protocols to the point where they were comfortable sending them out for comment and trying to get the final versions ratified and get those things out into the field so that people have them available. S2S 1.6, there are important enhancements in there to do with downloads, supporting the download process that happens in G2S on the floor. Some very important extensions in there for that, as well as some extensions to make the GATT process even better. G2S 2.1, once again, we've rolled in all the various manufacturer extensions that's happened over the last couple of years into 2.1. There's some additional functionality that we've put in there. And really 2.1, once it comes out, it's really going to be the next milestone for the industry in terms of implementation. And hopefully it's going to be out there for a few years, stable, implementable, and ready to go. The next steps we have coming up are in October. Hopefully GATT 4.0 will finish the ratification process, and that'll be available to all the manufacturers for implementation. And then sometime around the end of this year or the beginning of next year, we should be getting those final releases of GDS, S2S, and G2S out the door. And with that, thank you very much. I'm going to turn things over to Paul DeGrazia, who's going to talk about certification. Thank you.
So for those that don't know me, my name is Paul DeGrazia. I'm with WMS Gaming. I'm Senior Director of our Product Assurance organization, responsible for testing our systems, our platforms, EGMOSs, and other network gaming components. So about a year ago, I was, after heels of kind of working through the ARIA and Cosmo interoperability efforts that we had, and all the work that went into just developing kind of a common testing jargon, just even to how to go about solving the problem of doing interoperability testing between two vendors for the first time, or multiple vendors, I should say, in this industry. Kind of started reflecting back, and I started having conversations with Mark McDermott, who was obviously the technical director at GSA at the time, and saw a need to open up this kind of dialogue across the industry, especially as G2S and GSA standards in general took off. The problems of the few are going to become the problems of the many in terms of having to solve these types of testing problems. So the CIC, the Certification Interoperability Committee, kind of began as how do we do interoperability? How do we basically provide business solutions to the operators in an expedient, consistent, repeatable manner? And we looked at some of the things that had happened from the early ARIA days in deploying there with running SB window on WMS EGMs to stuff we went through Cosmo and thought that there would be value in establishing a set of standards, a set of guidelines for everyone to kind of follow along with based on testing best practices. And kind of from there it morphed into talking with Peter, really we should really kind of wrap the whole certification process around that. Certification being kind of the foundation of interoperability testing, which we'll talk about here a little bit more in a minute. So as I kind of jump into this, so what's the CIC of our charter? So essentially what we're all about is to, again, create a set of, there's really twofold, right? To create a set of guidelines, a set of templates, artifacts for all the vendors to use to come together. So when we say what is a test plan or what is a test script or what is a test case, we're all kind of speaking the same language, and that's pretty important from a software development engineering standpoint on the manufacturer end. And then also to define, to manage, and to really promote, and really I can emphasize not promote the certification process, to really, people, will have conversations and say, yeah, certification is a good thing, but really what we've really been focusing on is trying to really capture everyone's thought on, well, why is it a good thing, and what is the value, what is the ROI that it brings to everybody. So really having a lot of discussions. We had a good panel discussion on Monday where we kind of dove into that topic, and it was good to hear from the operator and the manufacturer side, and there's some comments that are kind of echoed into this presentation. So some of the initial things that we've kind of done is besides kind of figuring out what we wanted to be in our charter, we essentially have a strawman proposal that we worked together. Peter alluded to a kind of common set of test scripts. It was very apparent when we had our first face-to-face meeting back in July here in Vegas that having a consistent way to become certified was key. We needed an open book test basically to be able to make sure we had consistency and kind of taking pages out of other industries where they had similar kind of problems. That's exactly how they would solve that as well. And then again, I kind of alluded to we want to have a common set of documents, set of frameworks available that we can use as guidelines and how to attack the whole interoperability problem. So what we're working on right now is we have several work groups that are in process right now, and we're trying to work to finalize the framework. How do you do a set of common test scripts amongst the vendors that have different testing approaches and may have different internal tools that they've developed? And so we have a team that are meeting weekly to try to solve that problem, and how we can come up with a machine-readable scripting format that will be able to either be run through people's automated testing tools they developed, or off-the-shelf tools, or even manually. So we want to make sure that we have a consistent open book test, so when vendors submit to a lab or whoever's going to do the certification, that the outcome is relatively well known. We have to make sure that certification is not something that becomes a burden. It has to come more for free, and needs to be able to be maintained. So achieving is one thing, but maintaining it we think is actually going to be even more difficult unless we have this kind of approach. So I think through conversations, it's pretty obvious that everyone is on board. We had our face-to-face technical meeting to talk about this framework for common test scripts a few weeks back here in Vegas, and we had 6 vendors show up, plus we had Russ from Red Blue and some other folks participating from labs, and really quickly kind of made some decisions and got some direction and got some cadence going with some ongoing meetings that we're trying to vet all this stuff out so we can provide a roadmap to the board and to the community of some of the time frames that it's going to take to kind of achieve this monumental task. It is kind of taking on a life of its own. Just real quickly to kind of talk about certification versus compliance versus interoperability. I'm not going to go ahead and necessarily read all this, but really, as Peter kind of was talking about in his slides, unless it's gone through a GSA approved lab, it's not certified. I mean, there's the GSA compliant is kind of being thrown around, but that's really more centric to the vendor believes that they've obviously implemented per the GSA standards, but not necessarily, has not been certified by an approved GSA lab. So it's really important because I think a lot of us have been guilty in kind of throwing around certification and compliance, and as a part of this, it's educating the industry on what certification versus compliance. So compliance really has no meaning in terms of it, in the grand scheme of things. We have to be focused as an industry on certification. Right now, interoperability testing and that amount of effort it takes right now with all of the vendors really kind of being right now GSA compliant, meaning that we've implemented the standards, but we haven't been certified yet, the cost of interoperability testing is expensive. As we're trying to converge as we've been trying to converge the protocol and the amount of interoperability testing it takes to put the two pieces together, make sure they work, is extremely expensive, and we need to get that cost down. So the goal is we have a common set of test scripts, we all become certified, and the amount of interoperability testing it takes is still be necessary. This is never going to be plug and play, but that reduces over time. So I think I kind of covered that. So again, the interoperability is really focused in the end. What our goal is to provide these end-to-end product level interoperable solutions that that when the vendors want to put all these pieces together, it's not this painful acceptance process that they would have to deal with today. Okay, so here's just a couple bullet points. I think I touched on most of these already in terms of the value. I'm not going to go ahead and read these, but we kind of talked about these. It obviously provides a foundation for innovative gaming to drive coin in. Some of these are, and this is kind of captured from some of the things I've heard from the OAC. These are actually their words: strategic component in making purchasing decisions, and improving operator product acceptance testing process. And then the vendor thing, I think I covered pretty well already. But it's all about being able to reduce cost and increase our time to market, to get the product out there more quickly to the operators. Okay, so this was the main point of what we talked about in our face-to-face meeting, our first face-to-face meeting in July as a committee. And it's really what it comes down to, like we said, we've been really talking about, and that'll be what we kind of go to over and over again, is really getting this open book test of what it means to be certified, and the common set of test scripts. And obviously the G2S protocol is a very verbose standard, so it's going to require a lot of effort by the industry once we can get this framework established there for everyone to pull together, able to offer some cycles to be able to implement this across all the core classes. Let's see. I think that was it. So, thanks.
Okay, well, I'm very excited to invite the following guests to the stage. There are the operators from Canada. They have some senior business people here, and they're going to be talking about why GSA. They've been involved in GSA for more than 4 years, a lot of these operators, and I would like them to speak to the importance of the value of GSA standards. So, Muriel Grimble, please.
Well, good morning or good afternoon. I'm not sure what time it is right now, but thank you very much for inviting us to the annual meeting. My name is Muriel Grimble. I'm with the Alberta Gaming and Liquor Commission, and I'm joined today with my esteemed colleagues, Jim Lightbody and Carol Hardy from Jim from BCLC and Carol Hardy from the Oregon State Lottery. We're pleased to be invited here to address the GSA Annual Meeting of the membership of both the vendor community and the operators across the nation to share our views regarding the importance of standards which support the mission-critical technical development and foundation from which we will achieve our gaming strategies. Okay, sorry about that. So why are we here today? Well, we want to express our views on how we think about the gaming business and the operator relationship with GSA, and also to share our thoughts on how the GSA will be able to play an even more critical role in the continued success of the gaming industry for a mutual benefit. So let me take a moment to really introduce myself. I've been with the AGLC for 25 years and played a part in the growing gaming business from a small traditional lottery market to a multiple channel enterprise gaming jurisdiction that generates about $1.5 billion a year for the province of Alberta. I have the operational oversight responsibility of 25 casinos, 3 racing entertainment centers, about 13,000 slot machines, 6,000 VLTs in about 1,000 locations in the province, as long as we also have electronic bingo and the ticket lottery business. I also have, over the past few years, played a co-chair role on the Canadian-wide cross-country working group. which is made up of many of my colleagues across each province in our country. As well, we adopted the state of Oregon, who also shared our vision. I'm also pleased to have Jim Lightbody join us. Jim's been with the BCLC since 2001 as a VP of Lottery Gaming and helped transform and grow the lottery business through an increased focus on channel partnering relationships, data analytics, marketing, product development, and overall customer centricity. Jim recently changed portfolios and now serves as a VP of Casino and Community Gaming, responsible for the strategic direction and the business development of 17 casinos, 12 community centers, a business that's about $1.6 billion. Last but not least, we have Carol Hardy, Assistant Director of Marketing for the Oregon State Lottery. Carol's been in the gaming industry since the 80s and is responsible for the product development and management of a portfolio of 7 traditional product lines and the video lottery products. She's also responsible for the market research and the sales analysis, corporate advertising, and internet marketing. Carol is the chair of the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling and an avid supporter of Oregon's role in GSA, as well as the work that we're doing in the Cross Canada Working Group. Today, we'll start with the articulation of the vision of the evolution of the GSA, with the hope of generating more engagement by the operators across the globe. We will then share some of the specific business strategies from which our jurisdictions come from in order to provide context for which drives our sense of urgency for engaging the GSA in a new way. We'll summarize our thoughts and hopefully engage the audience in some questions and discussion. I'd like to start by reflecting for a moment on how we got here. It started about 4 years ago with a meeting of government-operated gaming jurisdictions across Canada, of course, including Oregon. And this meeting evolved into a collaborative movement, which is really the foundation that cemented the shared vision that we called at the time convergence. This group decided by working together with one voice, we could better articulate this vision to the vendor community and make it easier and more cost-effective for the vendor community to respond and provide the products and services that would support our journey to modernizing the gaming technologies and help us meet the needs of our players today and into the future. I can clearly remember the first meeting on convergence right here in Las Vegas, when our group invited the vendor community to come hear our unified vision at the time, and we asked the vendor community, please help us on this journey. 4 years later, we have a strong technical roadmap, meaningful collaboration, and a commitment across Canadian jurisdictions for membership in the GSA, representation on the GSA board, and a leadership role on the Operator Advisory Committee of the GSA. We feel we've come a long way on this journey, but we recognize that there is more heavy lifting ahead of us. And again, we are looking to the vendor community and the operators across our industry to embrace this vision of how we are going to further our mutual success. So let's talk about why standards are so important to us. I think we can summarize it very simply. It is central to our long-term business strategy of providing our customers with products they want and when and where they want them. We capture this by saying any place, anytime, anywhere. To accomplish this, we have to move away from proprietary monolithic systems to open systems and interoperability, to reduce the cost, to decrease customization, and improve time to market, and implement best-of-breed solutions. It's all about convergence across all of our gaming businesses and putting the player at the center of our universe. So how has the GSA and the OAC relationship supported our business strategy to date? We recognize that for many years, the GSA members have committed significant time and money to successfully develop a robust suite of gaming products that clearly support our vision. It includes, as was mentioned earlier, the G2S, the S2S, GDS, G2S wide area protocols. These are, without a doubt, the foundational pieces to our strategy. Also, over the past few years, the GSA has expanded its focus to encourage operator participation through the Operator Advisory Committee, which has facilitated a shift to standards versus protocols, which is where we want to focus our discussion today. We are pleased with the GSA's response to broaden the technical committee and to address the operator business requirements. For example, the GSA board acknowledged the need to address specific wide area protocol requirements, which is mission critical to jurisdictions, particularly in Canada and Oregon, as we organize many successful or operate many successful VLT networks. Also, the support to add the informed player class to address government requirements for responsible gaming programs, which again is critical to the Canadian and the Oregon markets, and which previously caused significant costs and effort to customize for each jurisdiction. This is a great example of mutual benefits for both operators and the vendor community, creating a single vision through standards through the GSA. As well as the work on the player user interface for both casino environments and VLT distributed networks, which again is of particular interest in Canada, where a significant replacement strategy is at play for the VLT network, which carries a vision of a single view of our player, with the PUI being central to making this happen. The current priority, which we think is mission critical, is the need for certification and interoperability of gaming products. We need to accelerate the work on the certification, as we have implementation plans that are ahead of the current GSA working group efforts, although earlier we heard a little bit more about those efforts, so thank you very much. Also, the internet gaming efforts of the OAC and the S2S committees is a first step in addressing the technology convergence needs resulting from increased interest in online gaming offerings amongst gaming jurisdictions. So, where is the GSA today from our perspective? Currently, a high percentage of vendor representation on the GSA board. An effective Operators Advisory Committee is in place and trying to move the agenda to respond in a timely manner to the business needs, as well as an active Certification Development Committee. The vendor community has also resourced strong technical committees to develop the protocols. Third-party labs are engaged as GSA members to support the interests of the vendors and the operators. The funding model is based on tiered dues structure, with the lion's share of the funding coming from the vendor community. So what needs to change to move forward on the journey? Increased operator membership and engagement in building standards and certification. We think that more operator perspective and can influence the GSA and can focus efforts on standards and guidelines for the products that we need. Executive leadership needs to have increased operator representation so GSA can better align to the market needs of our industry. Partnerships with regulators as they become more forward-looking, identifying regulatory areas that lend themselves to standardization to enhance the security and the integrity of our gaming businesses. Stabilize funding through a new business model to allow the GSA to expand the scope and embrace standardization initiatives, which will help facilitate its sustainability for the future. The new model needs to consider operator leadership roles, funding principles based on value for the dollar investment, as the current funding model is difficult to justify by government agencies. It's a challenge to make a compelling business case for membership at the gold and platinum levels at today's value proposition. In summary, GSA must move to fulfill its broader standards mandate and move forward beyond protocol standardization to become a comprehensive standards organization. And this can only be achieved if the basic plumbing is standardized so that our industry can focus on the things that add value to the business. So what's the urgency? Well, we are 3 jurisdictions here today, a small representation of a larger operator community aligned with this thinking that standards and certification is the root of our ability to achieve our objectives. As government-operated organizations, not unlike any other gaming operators, we need to ensure the integrity and security of our technologies and our end product to the player. The due diligence and rigor associated with developing standards and certifications is paramount in providing the assurances we need to mitigate the risks of failure, to increase our probability of success as we venture forward to offer products and services in a different way. Failure is not an option. For us, this stage of planning, research, and discovery is over, and we are aggressively moving on the implementation of the strategy to achieve convergence. So that's sort of our view, and now we'd like to have, I guess, start with BCLC, Jim Lightbody, if you'd like to come up and talk about the what's happening in British Columbia, and then Carol will join him afterwards talking about the Oregon State Lottery.
I just push. So only in the Canadian way can we actually take over states in the U.S., and we're happy to invite any other states to join Canada. But let me start by just telling you a little bit more about BCLC. As Muriel said, we're on the leading edge in terms of all of the lines of gambling that we offer in the province. We have a very well-developed casino business. We have a very well-developed lottery business, and we also, for the past 7 years, have been in the online gambling business, which is only available to adults in British Columbia. The only part of gambling that we don't actually participate in is in horse racing, but I will say that we are actively associated with that industry, and that we actually, with our partners, manage the slot machines and other forms of gambling in some of the racetracks in BC. As you also heard, we do quite a large turnover in the province, $1.6 billion, and our profit margins are pretty healthy. We return about $1.1 billion to our shareholder, who's the province of British Columbia. And we do this, again, through marketing to a little over 3.1 million adults in our province. But we have a challenge. Our challenge is we've now filled the supply gap of gambling opportunities in our province, and now we're going to turn from being a supply-driven business to a demand-driven business. And that means we've got to focus more on our players and, more importantly, those casual players who aren't participating with us as much as we'd like them to. Now, I'm not a technology guy, so if there's any questions about that, you won't be getting answers from me. I'm a marketing guy, and one of the things that I'm excited about with the Standards Association that you're developing is that you will be able to help us reduce some of the costs that are involved in bringing the games to our players, so that we can focus that funding on other things that are going to attract them and then make it a more exciting experience for them when they do play with us. At BCLC, we've just embarked in one of our largest and most expensive initiatives in our over 25-year history. Our current gaming system that runs all of our connected casinos as well as community gaming centers, which are, let's just call them mini casinos for now. They have everything except for live table games. And this system is going to cost us probably over $100 million over the next 3 years to replace the current system and introduce a lot of hardware and software and other technology stuff that our IT guys are all excited about. But this is obviously going to mean that it's going to hamper our ability to invest in some other kinds of things. And what the Bally system that we've purchased is going to allow us to do, however, is really initiate some greater experiences with our players. So this system, while it's designed to attract and make it a more exciting experience for our players, is also designed to protect the integrity of our systems and allow us to focus on the player. However, this investment required is going to be another huge issue for us if we don't have systems and standards that allow us to reduce the operating costs that are necessary to implement all this hardware and software. So the more that we can reduce the integration costs that we have to incur, the more that we can spend on the marketing and product initiatives for our players. And without those standards, those common standards, we're really in a hard spot not to be able to do that. So our vision is to leverage these common standards so we have the time, energy, and funding necessary to focus on our player. And just as a quick example, as everybody knows, there's lots of games that are out there from all of our great vendors, including games that we're offering right now on our online gambling system. And we have players who are members of our PlayNow.com, which is our online gaming site. And we have players who are members of our BC Gold Encore, which is our player account system in our casinos. And then we have players who play lottery completely anonymous to us. And what we're trying to do is to try to integrate all of those systems so that we can have that one view of the player, so that we can actually make that experience a lot more exciting for them. And we know that when they go online and play some of these games, we'd love to be able to then leverage that so that they can come to one of our facilities and play some of those games. So through our IT strategy and through our marketing strategy, we're trying to combine that so that we can offer people with the games that they want, when they want it, and in the place that they want it, whether it's at home, whether it's in one of our casinos, or whether it's on their mobile phone. So with that, I think we're going to leave questions for the end, Muriel, and I'll pass it on to Carol. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So I'm a marketing guy too, but I think what's really interesting about this journey we've been on over the last 4 years is the partnership that's happened between business and technology. In fact, some of my new best friends in Canada are on the technical side, and I think that's really interesting because it takes both sides working together. So there's been a lot of interesting partnerships established. So what are Oregon's interests? Just to put a framework around it, we operate 12,000 VLTs in a wide area network in 2,300 retail locations. That is the focus of our VLT business. We also have 9 traditional products that we offer. In FY 2011, we generated over $720 million in net sales. And today, our VLT network is comprised of products from 4 suppliers and based on a proprietary DXS4 protocol. Our number one gaming initiative in Oregon right now is to migrate from that proprietary video system to one based on GSA standards. And we will be implementing a G2S central system, deploying new VLTs based on G2S protocol standards, upgrading our WAN to Ethernet from WAN to Ethernet from Frame Relay, and installing Ethernet LAN wiring to 2,300 locations. So that's a large initiative. So why are we here and talking about this today? Because that is a large initiative, and really, I think we have to keep going back and saying this is all about the player, and we need to be where the player wants to be entertained. And if we are not focused on content and being able to be nimble and move with technologies, we as a gaming industry may actually lose the ability to compete in the entertainment space. So this is why we think standards are important. Really what we want to focus on, we want our suppliers to focus on is content and the experience rather than on customized systems and customized VLTs. So because I'm a marketing person and this wasn't written by me, I probably will jump a little off of this because I think everybody's already said it. The only way you're going to get to true standards is if you have open test scripts and this is a communication thing. So if I'm going to say communicate this way, if we are not all saying this is exactly how you communicate, you're going to get right back to where we are today with customized solutions. And so that's why certification becomes very important. Everybody says plug and play. We know it's not ever going to be exactly plug and play, but as much as you can standardize as possible, that's our goal. Clearly there's going to be some things that will be different, but I think this open discussion, not only among operators, but operators and manufacturers, is how you're going to get to something that's as close to plug and play as possible. So again, same thing that you've heard from our Canadian partners is it's all about the player, and it is about having a way to communicate with the player, engage the player, and a single view of the player is what we are building to. What we're doing right now in Oregon, just to put some specifics around it, is we're actually in a better place than I think some of the Canadian jurisdictions are because we do not have a lot of different verticals. We don't have a lot of different player databases. And what we are trying to do is say we are creating a loyalty program where we can have relationships with our players that will be the single view of the player, which becomes critical as you look at technologies moving forward to say how do you communicate with them in one place. So right now we're doing what we can in the U.S. is leveraging our traditional products, and we are about to launch a website called The Orcade. This is a for fun website, but the features of it are that every scratch ticket, which is one of our core products, has very wide appeal. Every scratch ticket will have a second chance. So every ticket that's in the market, you can enter it for a chance to win the last top prize in the game. So it allows us to manage that product line differently than we do today. You don't have to pull tickets out of the market when the last top prize is sold, and you're adding value, you're engaging consumers in a different way. There's 4 fun skill games that you can play against your friends. If you get high score, you can share achievement badges with people on Facebook. So we're trying to integrate the social media and where people are today and engage them that way. You can win points when you enter second chance drawings, and you can spend those to enter drawings for promotional prizes. And really key, what we've heard from our consumer is you see the We Heart Oregon at the end. I think this is something that lotteries should recognize is we have powerful brands. People are loyal to us because we do good things. And when you start moving into the future, that's really critical because you don't know where your competition's going to come from. But being smart about that now and recognizing who your customers are, connecting with them is absolutely critical moving into the future. The other thing that's absolutely critical is the play responsibly piece. So we are again about to launch this site. It's an age control site, which is a step beyond other U.S. lotteries and what they've done with for fun sites. But we believe it's absolutely critical that you need to protect the consumer, and this is intended for adult entertainment. So again, why is convergence important? We talked about it a lot, but as we're looking around the show and we're saying what are the things we need to look at in the future, responsible gaming absolutely has to be there, and we believe that we should all be managing responsible gaming in the same way. We shouldn't be managing in different ways. Loyalty programs are really a way to tie in the efforts of trying to get people to set limits, is engage them in loyalty components so you can have a holistic view of gaming. We've also talked a lot about the player user interface. Our vision there is that is just a view into internet, potentially internet delivery of game content. So you could have internet game content delivered on a VLT. You could open the whole player user window and have it take over the screen and say that's a way to deliver content. Could be on handheld devices, wherever people want to access the games. This is another just last key point is one of the things that Oregon is also championing is regulatory issues around where we're going to move next. If we don't have standards, particularly as you move into the internet and mobile spaces, and there are not true standards, certainly not in the U.S. because those things are not open to us now. If we don't have standards, we will potentially make some mistakes, we'll make missteps, and it may damage the ability of all of us to move forward. So I think the GSA has given us a real platform not to begin with developing protocol standards, but we are hoping that we can, operators can continue to use this as a platform to send common messages to the manufacturers to say, this is what we want. This is what we want as customers. That allows us to get things out of the way that avoid customization and allow us to focus on content, which is where we're going to engage with the consumer. So pass it back to Muriel.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. I think you'll find that there's lots of similarities in what we are talking about today, and hopefully we can have some discussion. I was just going to really talk about Alberta now, a little bit about what we're thinking about. We actually started, I guess, articulating a vision. We call it our 2018 vision, but it's really, and a 10-year vision, but of course now we're in 2012, so we still call it our 10-year vision, which really laid a foundation for what we're calling sort of our gaming end state, which is really what everyone has been talking about today. And this end state has laid the foundation for determining, what we need to achieve our objectives and a methodical plan in order to guide our activities over this 10-year period taking us to 2018. And we clearly are moving, as is British Columbia and Ontario, to what we refer to as sort of a product-centric gaming environment, where we would put the products out. If they sold really well, we would buy more products, get rid of the ones that weren't. And that was our environment that we have been in for all of our businesses. And certainly in the slot world, it's far more dynamic. But in our video lottery world, actually, we haven't changed really a game since 2004. And actually, technically, probably haven't changed a game since 1991 when we launched the video lottery project. So we see our world changing considerably in that world. And certainly the casino world has always been dynamic, so we've learned a lot from that, and certainly from a lot of the folks in this room. But we're moving now to what we're calling the player-centric environment, and working towards the common technology architecture and sort of maximizing the maximization of sort of those business standards which we're talking about through GSA, and certainly the work that has been done on the OAC. And the output is really a gaming experience. This is our language here that encourages a healthy balance between sustaining our revenues and responsible gaming. We have a very healthy gaming environment in Alberta, and we recognize that the challenge isn't necessarily growing the business, it's probably just sustaining the business that we have. So we've broken down our vision into 2018 into 3 windows of time. So the first window is our video lottery replacement window, which really is our first step in the journey. And I guess today we could say that we're sort of the rubber's hitting the road for us, and we're really urgently trying to get this move forward. One, we have some obsolescence in our product that we have in the field, and our revenues are not particularly strong right now. I mean, we have a huge business, but it's pretty flat. And the task of modernizing the technology will establish that foundational layer, which we're going to use for all of our businesses. So again, it's back to we want to have a strong foundation of technologies that allow us to leverage and to complete that objective of that single view of the player. And it's really critical for us in terms of our future strategy. Although some of the pieces included in the technology modernization are new to our organization, we are taking a very calculated, fact and proven-based approach to determining both the availability and the reliability of the various pieces of functionality required technology that needs to be integrated to ensure a successful end product, which will enable us to replace the VLTs and sustain our revenues. The status of our first window of activity, which we're heavy into right now, is the VLT system and the hardware replacement. We are pleased to be working with Spilo to implement the new games management system. We've also procured an enterprise service bus from Software AG. acquired a new telecommunications network, acquired the download configuration functionality from the GMS, and we've issued an RFP for the player user interface platform and what we call our player experience management, which will close at the end of October. And we've just closed the RFP for the VLT terminals, which we need to replace. So this may seem simple on paper to look at. We're just doing a few things, but in our world, that's a lot of things to do, and hopefully having it started in June of 2012. So the time is behind us. The project timelines move our vision to really, again, converge all of our gaming businesses, taking us through our casino modernization, which then we recognize has some different complexities than our video lottery network, and moving us through to looking at our ticket business. I mean, as Carol mentioned, we have a player, like we're over 3 million people in Alberta, but we see our players as having a variety of experiences. And the ticket business, 80% of our population, 18 and over, really buys a ticket. So we have a huge sort of data opportunity with these folks that may want to play other products if we make them available to them in the way that they want to play. And we also have, we love this product in Alberta. It's called Bingo, which we know anybody in this room knows that Bingo is struggling. And we also have an urgency because we deal with our charities in our Bingo program is to also enhance the delivery of the Bingo product to ensure that the charities receive the kind of dollars they need to support the programs that we do. So it looks a little late in the schedule. It takes us into 2017-18, but unfortunately there's not a lot of revenue in that business, so it kind of takes the back seat. But we spend a lot of time thinking about how we rejuvenate the Bingo business. And there may be other channels. I mean, we don't know what channels. We certainly don't have approval in our province for internet gaming, but with all the discussion and the things we hear about here and in other places, I would assume at least people in the province of Alberta someday will be playing lottery products on the internet, we hope, but it's not approved at this point in time. So as you can see, there are a lot of folks that are moving in the direction that we are. I won't go through them all, but we have lots that are purchasing and implementing systems based on the GSA standards. So I guess the question really is what next? With standardization, we think more is better. More operators implementing standards means more vendor product, more cost-effective delivery, which means more business value. The continued evolution of our business strategies depends on the standards and the partnerships, and our obvious choice is a partner with GSA. In summary, standardization is central to our strategy of providing customers with the products they want, when and where they want them. Standards are critical to interoperability and improved time to market of gaming products and services. Interoperability is also critical to our strategy of implementing the best-of-breed solutions. And of course, internet and mobile are becoming realities in our business, and we need a way to integrate these channels into our legacy businesses. So at the end of the day, standards and certification will facilitate the convergence across all of our gaming businesses. We feel we need to look at developing standards as an investment in us achieving our business strategies, and maybe not sort of truly just a cost of membership. The governance of GSA must evolve, we believe, into a three-way, meaningful partnership of operators, regulators, and manufacturers. Any questions of all of us? Thank you very much. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them.
Well, very happy to see these folks from Canada come over here and explain from an operator's perspective the importance, and I think we will definitely share that with the operators in Las Vegas. Last but not least, I'd like to recognize a couple of people, and that's the end of the annual meeting. It's very important that we would not have achieved what we've achieved with, as you already know, your contributions to this trade association, but also to the tremendous amount of effort that you don't see that happens behind the scenes. Specifically, every single engineer from every single member company that spent countless hours in discussing and debating, coming up with a solution that at the end of the day is going to change or is changing the industry. And I'd like to applaud and respect those people because they collaborate in harmony. It doesn't matter what's on their T-shirt. It doesn't matter what company they're from. They only have one objective in mind: develop the right and the best solution for this industry. So I'll continue to thank those people because they do a phenomenal job. Specifically those people who are leaders, the chairs and the vice chairs. They have sometimes tricky challenges trying to manage within the policies, and you guys have done a phenomenal job, so thank you very much. Last but also, I'd like to thank Lyle for his continued chairmanship. Lyle, 6 years. I remember the day when we got together 7 years ago in Reno, not unlike I remember the day when I got together with Cornell in Oregon. I'm an operator, I have a problem. How do we solve it? In your case, it was the Western Class 2 environment. In their case, it's about a complete new foundation for the industry moving forward. And if it wasn't for the vision and understanding and belief in an association like ourselves, this industry would still be where it was 20 years ago. So, Lyle, thank you very much. I'm going to make this very short. There is another person I'd like to explicitly, two people I'd like to spell out. Of course, I'd like to thank GSA staff. They've done a phenomenal job. But Michelle and I, we had some very serious challenges over the last couple of months, specifically starting April 1. So to Michelle, I don't know where she is. You have done a phenomenal job. Last person, you might not know, but GSA has recruited a new technical director. His name is Chris Bolton. He's in the room. Chris was previous director IT from the Palazzo, the Venetian. Shall I say Hooters or not? And Hooters. So, welcome, Chris. Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to conclude the session. Are there any questions for GSA or for our keynote speakers that you'd like to ask? No. Okay, none here. That meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.